What's up, everybody? This video is from Rob Filter. He is four tabling some NL10 on stars, and it looks like he already has abbreviations in the stats, which is kind of nice. And on the upper right, I don't think he had played a hand with that guy yet, but he opened ace-8 suited on the button, and like he writes in his notes, he just jammed 40 big blinds, so he folded. And I think that's fine. Like, I don't think it's quite strong enough to call there versus, some unknown that you haven't played any hands with. And on the upper right, we raise 8-9 offsuit on the button. We get called by this guy, Metsaka, in the blinds. And there are some times where I might not see a better board like this, but it's usually when, well, for one thing, when there's 6 people on the table, like for whatever reason, even though the situation is the same, like you'll get called by a lot more hands when it's 3-handed than when it's 6-handed. Even though there really isn't a whole lot of difference between it being folded to you on the button 6-handed and just being a 3-handed game. But people will have looser ranges. We don't know that the guy's a regular. He just sat down. He is bought in full, but we also have backdoor nut flush draw. We have a little bit of equity, so it's not one of those cases where I'm just giving up on the board because like in a couple other videos there were some spots like this where I just didn't like c-betting because I thought that the person's calling range was just like totally smashes a board like this. But in this case, I don't think that's so much the case. And plus, like I said, that combined with us having a little bit of equity, I think that's just fine. It doesn't work out for us this time, but I think that's still a profitable c-bet in that case, given what we know at the time. And on the lower left, we open with a king-queen. We get called by a guy that we don't know anything about. We got a couple hands on him, and he played one of them so far. I like this bet size on this board. It's pretty hard for him to have any draws, so there really isn't a whole need to bet huge. You'd like to get called by hands like sixes, maybe an ace high, something like that. If you get called on the flop, I might bet more on the turn, since at that point it's harder for him to call with those weaker hands again anyway, and you're mostly just getting called by the stronger part of his range, which you're still ahead of. But for now, I like that bet sizing. And same thing on the upper right, like 60 and 105. That's a pretty good bet size. So I like both of those hands. Here on the upper left, we've got this guy. He's 44-32 so far, over 25 hands, so he's pretty active. We've got a queen-jack. We can't really just call there, though, because we have this like tiny baby short stack behind us, and that would be kind of sketchy anyway. Like queen-jack is usually at the top of a folding range, or it might be in a 3 bluff range or whatever. But I don't like calling there because a little short stack's going to jam in quite often, and I don't like 3-betting there for the same reason. A lot of times you're just going to get exposed by the little short stack that just gets it in with ace high or whatever. So I don't know, it kind of hurts the EV of a 3-bet there. If the short stack had more money, if it would be less of a factor to have them behind you, then I don't mind 3-betting here. because, like I say, this is kind of at the top of your folding range. It has some value. The times that he does call, it's one of the better hands that you probably wouldn't be calling with. So I would like it, or at least I wouldn't dislike it if it weren't for this little short stack behind us. But as such, I don't really like it too much. Okay, so we get called by both people. The short stack is essentially all in. He's only got 60 cents left. This guy bets $1, and this board is pretty dry. There are flush draws, and there's a couple of like headshots like Jack 10 or something. But for the most part, you're usually kind of way ahead, way behind here. So I think this is a pretty easy call on the flop, just to you wouldn't think this guy would be bluffing much, but people are idiots, so you never really know. But he could have lots of marginal hands too. He could have an 8. He could have a hand like pocket 9s or pocket 10s, or just something that he kind of like doesn't know what to do with, but doesn't want to fold. And against those kind of hands, like, they're going to fold a lot when you raise. Like I like calling there just because I think he can have a lot of stupid hands, and you get a lot more money out of those hands by calling. Plus, our hand isn't exactly super strong, so when you raise, like, the stuff that continues, like, you're not exactly going to be crushing his range with a queen jack when you raise here. And it looks like he does raise, which, like I say, I prefer just calling there. You're not going to be, I mean, in this case he has a set of 8s, which is going to be pretty rare. But even so, like, I just don't think you're going to be happy versus the range you get it in with there. Like, most of the time, his range is going to be pretty heavily weighted towards Queen X, a lot of which beat us. He's a lot more likely to call us pre-flop with Ace King and King Queen than he is with, like, a Queen 10 or something. And there are a few draws he can have, like flush draws, which most of those would be kind of flipping with. But overall, I don't think we're in very, I don't think we're getting in very good there when we just like raise, call the flop. And given that the guy's been aggro, that he's probably kind of fishy. He's like, calling our 3-bet out of position, and he's been, like I say, real aggro so far. I really like just calling there because a decent percentage of the time he's just going to be doing something stupid, and when he is, you will get more. It's irrelevant in the case where he has a set of 8s, because we're just going to get stacked there almost always, no matter what we do. But it'll be very relevant if he was just sitting there with, ace high or some weak draw or weak pair or whatever. Okay, in the lower left, we've got a guy that opened under the gun. We've only played 5 hands, but it looks quite evident that he's a regular. He bought in full stack. He's already been through the blind, so he's got an auto reload on. More than likely he's a regular. I actually kind of like 3-betting here better than calling when it's on us. Not so much because I think we're in great shape against his continuing range when we 3-bet, but I think that because I think people would be surprised at their win rate, or more accurately their loss rate, when they call under the gun raises with ace queen out of position. I know my own results with it haven't been very good. Just in that specific circumstance, you're in the blinds, a guy raises under the gun, you call with ace queen. I show a decent, or I show profit with like ace queen suited, but I usually do pretty poorly with ace queen offsuit in my own results, at least over hands that I played, and this has been a while. But just playing a mostly straightforward style, and obviously if you have a decided edge over your opponent, it's probably a strong enough hand. But I think that it's definitely, like I say, unless you play really well, you're probably going to do worse with it than you think, especially from the small blind. But it's definitely still very profitable to 3-bet if you don't like calling with it, just because it does block like a lot of nut combinations. you know, ace, king, queens, aces, obviously. And when you do get called, that you know, it's not like, you know, obviously ace queen has some playability post flop. So I like 3-betting there better than I like calling. And it depends. Like, if the guy behind us was a big fish or something in the big blind, then I might like calling better to let him in. So far, he's 13-0, so he's been pretty tight, and he's short stacked. So in that case, I actually like 3-betting better than calling. In here, we flop top player, top kicker, 3-way pot. There isn't really much reason to bet out there, though. The guy that opened this pot originally might c-bet if it's checked to him because the board is so dry. And it's not like you're, you know, when you bet out, you're not going to be interpreted as being bluffy there with a fish in between you and that guy in a 3-way pot. So I think it's better just to check and let it come back to you. And as it turns out, this Vertigo guy, this little short stack fish guy, well, his stats aren't that fishy, but he's just been kind of tight. When he bets out here, you know, I wouldn't expect him to be bluffing a whole lot. You know, mostly his range is going to be Queen X in pairs. You know, he could very easily have a hand like 9, something like that. We're out of position. He's probably not folding a ton of the stuff that he bets. He's, like I say, he's probably not bluffing a whole lot in that spot. He hasn't been. He's been very kind of weak, tight, passive so far, even though it's just 8 hands. So I'd probably just go ahead and raise this because I don't figure that he's going to be. I don't figure that we gain a whole lot by just calling there. And sometimes we'll lose out. Like if he does have 9s and we call, you know, there's a lot of bad turn cards for him. When he has a hand like that. So I like just raising, even though we could still easily you know, get the rest of his stack and just calling. Okay, so we do raise, we get called, and we get like a super bad turn card because now, you know, that's a decent chunk of his range, king queen, but he only has like, you know, a 2/3 sides pot bet left, and he's not going to fold. Like, it's a bad turn card for him too, but he's pretty much not going to fold anything at that point. So you just put the rest in and sigh when he has king queen. I don't think it loses you very much value though. That's the point. Like when he has those hands like 9s, 10s, whatever, he's still going to call with those on the turn, given the size of the pot. Here with the 5-6 suited on the left versus this river ace guy, like I assume that the yellow seems to be regulars. I don't see his stats yet, but whatever. Most regulars are, they're folding enough there that raising there with the 5-6 suited is fine. Against some like calling station type guys, I might open fold that just because it won't play that great out of position, and they're going to be calling a bunch. But against most regulars, you're probably going to show an immediate profit anyway, just because they're only going to defend with like, at most a 35% range. It depends. Some guys are a little more, but on average, not so much. Okay, here with the 7-9 suited on the lower right, this is a hand that would normally be, it would be pretty borderline if everybody was an unknown. So looking at the situation we have here, I like open folding it because we've got this guy behind us, the catch or not guy. He's 50-17, so this kind of, you're going to get called a ton by that guy, and this kind of hand just doesn't play that great out of position, which is too bad. If he was like a tighter regular guy, I would definitely open there because you've got another fishy guy, 50-33 so far in the small blind. Nobody behind us really 3-bets all that much, but you're just going to end up out of position and you're going to end up multi-way sometimes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you're definitely not going to like bluffing isn't going to be it's not going to add a lot of value to the hand when you're just going to be out of position versus a huge fish a lot of the time. So yeah, I like that fold. Okay, on the lower left here, we have pocket fours. In some other videos, there were a lot of spots where I liked just open folding them under the gun because, overall, you have to be in a pretty easy game for those to be profitable opens under the gun. Either that or just play very well. I think in this case it's fine though because you have, you have a more favorable than normal condition. Like the three guys behind you are kind of tightish regulars that aren't going to have real wide ranges for calling you in position, and none of them are like super aggressive. There's nobody at the table that really 3-bets all that much. And in the small blind, you've got a guy that's 41-6, pretty fishy. So we're going to be in position versus a fish a decent amount of the time. And even the other blind too is just kind of like he's tighter, but he looks like a fish too. So in this case, where you've got regs that aren't even really all that aggressive behind you and fish in the blinds, this is definitely not like the other situations where I didn't like opening with a small pocket pair in the gun. This is definitely fine. And on the top two tables, those are both fairly straightforward situations. You're just betting there on the upper left as a semi-bluff, and on the right, obviously, it's a pretty good situation. Okay, lower left, again, we get called by this regular. Flop comes ace, queen, 3. Just for another comparison to other videos, there were lots of spots where, like when we would raise from the small blind and get called by a regular in the big blind, or we would raise in late position and get called by a regular in the big blind, and then a board would come like this, and I would say, well, I don't like c-betting here because their range is going to be real Broadway heavy and our hand sucks, blah blah blah. In this case, it's a totally different situation because when we open under the gun and this guy calls us from the cutoff, in this case his range isn't real Broadway heavy. In fact, it hardly has any Broadways in it at all for most regulars at these levels. Usually they're just calling us with like 2s through jacks, ace queen, king queen suited, maybe, you know, ace jack king queen, although some of those guys are just folding them or 3-betting them. But the point is, they're not calling us with like, you know, queen 10. They're not calling us with jack 10, king 10. You know, they're throwing almost all that away. So, you know, pocket pairs that hate this board is like way bigger part of their range than it is in some of those other situations I was talking about. So, you know, relatively, broadways aren't a real, you know, his range here isn't very Broadway heavy. So, you know, with anything at all, you can bet here profitably. He's just going to be folding quite a lot of the time, given what his pre-flop range is. And on the upper right, we raise with a queen jack suited, get called, flop and open ended straight draw, pretty standard c-bet there, and we turn the nuts. This guy has 652. Obviously we're betting, it's just a matter of bet size. Obviously we're betting big, because if you bet $1.30 and he calls, it's going to be like slightly an overbet on the river. So I think it's important to make it like $1. $1.40, $1.50. It's not going to change his range much, but it might make you look like a little bit less strong on the river when you put the rest of his stack in. Yeah, it looks like that's what I was thinking about, and that's good. Okay, lower left, weird situation. You've got this Buddha Fort guy. We already have a note on him, limped, probably tight fish, because there was a hand where he just like open limped under the gun. He's 20-10 so far, over 20 hands, so he's been tight, passive, and he limped that one. With the king 10 here, I like just folding. You know, like versus different opponents, I'll do a lot of different things here. But versus this guy, like, you know, he's been tight, you know, he's been passive. So, you know, if we 3-bet, I'm not expecting him to fold a bunch. I'm not expecting king 10 to be in great shape against his range, calling, or 3-betting. So I like just folding here. Now, if this had been the laggy guy from at the beginning of the video in the hand where he had a queen jack, in this situation, you know, we've got 2 regulars behind us. Neither one of them 3-bets very much, at least to this point. So if it had been that guy, you know, given that his opening range is loose, we have position, we're not getting squeezed a lot. And against that guy, I would like calling here with a king 10. And like if the guy was some, you know, just standard, like 1916 kind of taggy, you know, 2017, you know, depending on what's fold the 3-bet would be. Against a guy like that, I might 3-bet just because, you know, I would figure they would have a, you know, a little bit tighter range that king 10 wouldn't play that great against. Plus they'll play a little better after the flop, and they're going to fold. You know, those kind of guys fold a lot to 3-bets before the flop. Depending, I mean, if you see their stats, whatever. So depending on the guy, there's a lot of different things I'll do with the king 10 there. But against this guy that we specifically know is tight and passive, yeah, I'm just going to fold with king 10 here. And we do 3-bet, and we get called, and we get kind of an interesting flop. It's kind of it's a mono flop, but it doesn't really hit much other than that. He's c-betting here is probably going to be, obviously there's lots of stuff he continues with, but it's still going to show a profit. That was a decent bet size, 70 into 129. So I think he's definitely going to fold enough there that you don't have to give up. Oh, and I take back earlier what I said about yellow probably meaning regs. I think yellow just means we have a note on them but haven't assigned them a particular category or something. Because a lot of these guys, one of these guys is 55, 32, 29, yeah. So I don't think that really means anything in particular. Here with the kings versus this guy's button raise, he only has 75 blinds left behind, and this is kind of a big size re-raise. Like, if he calls that, the pot's going to be 165 on the flop, and so he'll have like less than 5 PSR. Like, I don't think we need to make it quite that big. Like, I think you'll get called more with 70 cents than 80. Just 80 seems really big. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but I think you can make it small and still very easily get this guy stacking. So I mean, I don't hate it because we're out of position, but we have we have kings, and the guy is probably bad also, so who cares? Okay, and the same guy on another table, we've got the ace queen suited. Obviously, we're 3-betting here for value. We would expect him to call us with, he's 30, 22, and whatever. He's not playing full stack on this other table. It looks like he's got him marked as aggro fish. I like in this case, I feel more strong about it than against the Kings one. I'm definitely like raising small here because I want him to call me out of position with, um, you know, Ace Jack, with King Jack, whatever. I want him to call out of position with stupid stuff. While I have a better hand, I have position on him. I'm gonna play better than him. Like I'm not really. This isn't a spot where I'm looking to like blow him out of the pot. So I'm definitely in this case. I'm just raising. It was 60 cents there. Just because it's very, it'd be very favorable when he calls us, I would think. Oh, and there are some guys that I do like that sizing against just because they're not going to care. Like if they're just some like, you know, 70 VVIP mega fish or something, you can raise whatever you want and they're still going to call you, so I don't care. But this really isn't that guy. Here with the 9-10 of clubs, small blind. This is the same guy I talked about before. He's 54-27. He has position on us. And even though we're going to get called a ton, though, like 9-10 of clubs just has too much post-flop value, so that's a pretty good open. Flop top pair, so pretty straightforward value betting. And this guy's range is so wide pre-flop that there's definitely tons of, there's a lot more worse than 9-10 that he can call with than what a regular guy would call with. So we value bet flop and turn, and then the river is a very bad card for us. Not so much that we expect him to have a 6 in his hand a ton of the time, but it's just, it takes away a lot of the combinations of worse hands that he can call with, so it makes it harder to value bet. A lot of his 10s would be better than ours. He can have worse 10s too. But anyway, it just takes away like a big chunk of the range that that we can value bet against. Plus, there were a lot of different like 7-8, 7-9, various different straight draws, ace highs, and stuff like that he could call with. So, since he had a lot of draws, or at least a decent amount of draws that miss, and we lose a lot of value combos, I like checking on the river. Okay, so that is what we do. We check the river, and then he makes this really big bet that's almost pot size. In this case, I think you have to call here, even though we didn't love this river card. When he makes this bet size, for one thing, most people, or most fish particularly, if he has a hand like King 10, usually he's not going to make this huge bet size, even though it would be a pretty decent value bet for him. Usually when he makes that bet size, it's either going to be some big hand like a 6-7, or it's going to be a miss straight or an ace high, and he can even have something silly that actually has showdown value, because a fish isn't going to understand showdown value as well as a regular player. So I think you're going to be good the 31% of the time, or whatever you need to call here. So even though it's kind of a crappy situation and you're going to lose a decent amount, I think that's actually a call. I'm definitely expecting, if this guy called us flop turn with ace jack, I'm not assuming that he's just going to say, oh, well, I have ace high showdown value, I'm going to check on the river. Fish don't usually think that way, especially this guy that's been, pretty aggro in general. I would imagine he can turn a lot of hands into a bluff that have some showdown value. Okay, and it looks like he was pondering whether he was going to do something here against this Elpido guy that he has marked as, aggro donk or whatever. Probably a pretty bad idea considering we've already 3-bet him twice, which he folded to. I would expect, people, that's one thing that people notice faster than anything else when they get 3-bet a lot. So, after I've already 3-bet a couple times and he's folded, I'm definitely, a lot more excited about raising him with a value hand than a bluff, especially if I think he's kind of on the fishy side. Because I wouldn't expect him to just, keep folding all of the same hands. I would expect him at some point to just spaz out, which is not what you want to happen when you have a king two. And it looks like he did think better of it. But I mean, his folded 3-bet so far is 33%, even though he folded to both of ours. But even if it was much higher than that, just because of the dynamic that we have with him so far, I probably wouldn't have done it anyway. Okay, and backing up here a second. Lower to left, we have a 6-9 offsuit against this river ace, and his fold to steal is 88. So I like our raise there. Like I've said other times, I might not raise with like a 2-5 offsuit or something that makes it very obvious that we're raising with any two cards, even though we could. But definitely, it's definitely a stat that everyone should have on their HUD, and looking for these situations where you you can raise with everything and steal blinds, it makes a really big difference in your win rate over time, especially in games where there's lots of tight guys. And so far, the same thing on the button. We had, I don't know, that was like a king 7 or something, which is kind of marginal anyway, but you got two guys behind you, one with 88% fold to steal, one with 100. Definitely raising super wide there. And same with the jack 8 suited. This would normally be kind of like the top of a cutoff folding range, maybe the bottom of a raising range, depending on just how tight you play. But it's definitely a raise in this spot for the same reasons the other were. So I'm kind of surprised that he folded that. That's definitely going to be profitable with these guys behind you. Like it's pretty hard for it to be profitable to raise small blind with any two cards and not be able to raise a cutoff with a jack 8 of clubs. Especially you look around in the 3-bets of these guys. Nobody 3-bets very much. Everybody folds to steals a lot. So they're definitely folding a bunch there. And, plus you have a pretty decent playable hand anyway. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I think overall this was a pretty well played session. I'd say if there was anything to look at, it might be what situations, there were a lot of 3-betting situations that I thought were pretty questionable, where we 3-bet when I thought that we shouldn't, or I didn't like the sizing or something like that. So if there's anything to look into based on this particular session, I would say that would be it. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope you all liked it. If you'd like to have your own poker video reviewed for free, check out the Upload tab on my Facebook fan page. If you're interested in personal coaching or have suggestions for future content for the site, email me at opensourcepoker@gmail.com.